Hey. Wagwan, everybody. This is Empress Ishay, and I am going live today so that we can talk about the movie review of the movie Straw that Tyler Perry just came out with. Now, I got to say, from the reactions, initially, I was pretty terrified to watch this movie. I was not sure what to expect because I was getting so many different mixed reviews. Like, for real, people were saying all different types of stuff. It was people that was saying like, no, it's trash. It's one of the worst movies he's ever made. There was people that was saying this is an amazing movie. Like they was so excited to see it. They said it had so much emotion. They was like, it's definitely something that you want to see. And so I'm like, I wasn't really sure which, opinion to go with. And of course, what that made me understand is that I had to kind of form my own opinion on this one. It wasn't going to be something that I could kind of just, see the reviews and just kind of go with that as far as this particular movie. So I was like, okay, let me check it out. And I was bracing myself, right? Because a lot of people were saying that what this movie was going to be about, it was basically, a saga of single mothers. It was basically talking about a whole bunch of horrible stuff happening to single mothers and stuff like that, right? So, of course, in the first 15 to 20 minutes of the movie, you see some of the most horrific things happen to this woman. You know what I'm saying? She has her child taken away. She has, she loses her job. She loses her apartment. She's not able to cash her check at the bank. It's like all of these horrible things are happening. And you're kind of like, this is the type of stuff that, yeah, I mean, this is pretty bad. Like, anybody going through all of this stuff on a regular basis, you leaning towards a mental breakdown of some sort. Um, so when I was looking at that, I'm like, damn, he really packed it on thick in the beginning of this movie. Like, what the hell? Like, you know what I'm saying? The first 15 to 20 minutes, you kind of like, how much more can she take already? And the movie just started. But as the movie goes on, the plot becomes so much more complex that you see this is not just about a single mother going through horrifying things. It becomes about so many different other things throughout the course of the movie that it's almost like as you keep watching, there's something else that comes out the woodwork that makes you say, oh, this is about something else as well, right? So it was pretty interesting because like I said, already I didn't like what I was seeing in the first couple minutes of the movie. I already was like, yo, this might be about to get turned off in a minute. Like I don't know how much more I can take, and I'm just a person watching it. But as you continue further into it, you see so many different elements to it, right? Like I think as you continue on, you see people just being completely horrible to her. You see people just, of course, not really taking nothing into consideration or caring about what she got going on. And most of the time, the world don't. The world does not care what you got going on. As a matter of fact, that's life. You know what I'm saying? But I think it really kind of put an extreme laser beam on just how awful shit can be. So, just looking at that and then going further into that and seeing, okay, she's going through all these awful things, and then boom, she's in the middle of a robbery. Like, okay, that escalated quickly. And then this ain't even like, you know what I'm saying? Like one of those type of things you could just kind of like get out or whatever. Like she was like in the midst of a gun pointed on you. That's it. And I think that in the midst of this happening, it really was just her reaction that caused everything to happen from then. I think that she wasn't even able to control none of her reactions from that point. It was like the mental breakdown started, you know what I'm saying, around the point number one that they took her daughter, that you see them taking her daughter. But then at this point, it was kind of like from there was nothing left up here. It was a complete and total mental breakdown, right? So then moving forward from that, when she goes into the bank, and she is basically numb as she's like, I just need to cash my check. And the lady's like, look, you don't have no ID, then I don't know what to tell you. And I think in her mind, it's just like one more person just not really caring, just not really, you know what I'm saying, hearing what she's saying, understanding what she's saying. And so when she pulls out the gun, it's almost like she does not know why they respond in the way that they are. So as it relates to the concept of the mental breakdown, it's like a detachment from reality. She don't understand, why are you handing me all this money? What is wrong with you? Why are you freaking out? What is wrong with you? And she really doesn't understand that when you have a gun in your hand and you in a bank, they equate that shit with robbery. You know what I'm saying? So like, she's not even really computing that. It doesn't even make sense to her. As she goes forward into this, she is not understanding how she got in the process of people feeling like she's robbing the bank. It's a total detachment. It's a total detachment to the extent to where she don't know why people are responding to her this way. Like, she really genuinely doesn't seem to know why people are telling her that she's robbing a bank. So as you go on in the movie and you see, of course, everybody's treating her very, very timidly, like they're very afraid of her. They're very, and of course, there was the whole thing as far as what was in her book bag and them thinking that it was a bomb, because that part was crazy. It was almost like you just wish somebody would ask her what it was so she can tell them that it was just a science project, because she's, I'm saying, carrying this around in her bag. And people are like, she's so volatile, she can go off at any moment. And she's like, no, it's a science project. It's just batteries. You know what I'm saying? So like, that whole thing was like the elephant in the room, and she did not pick up on it the whole time, that that's what they thought that it was. When you hear the police officers and you think of that whole experience, right? What was interesting about that is that it was almost like, in this case, you needed the woman cop, right? You needed the woman cop in that instance only because nobody else could kind of figure out why she was doing the things that she was doing. They was kind of treating it like a regular case of somebody robbing a bank. And I think she was the only one who recognized that, that was not what it was. By the way, I do feel like Tiana Taylor did a good job with that role too. I didn't know what to expect when I seen her, because I guess when I see her, I think of like Byron, you know what I'm saying? But like, I think she really did a good job embodying that role, though. I think that she did better than even I was expecting. So kudos to her for that. Man, there was definitely a couple of scenes that stood out, I would say. And a couple of things that she did that the other police officers wouldn't have been able to understand if, that lady cop had not been there. I think that them being like, wait a minute, what? Well, she let some of the hostages go? What's going on? I don't understand. This don't make no sense. They wouldn't have been able to understand that if she would have said no, because she's not a killer. She's not here trying to rob the bank. She got caught up in this horrible situation and she don't even know what's going on. You know what I'm saying? Like, basically, in essence, she was having so much of a mental breakdown that she didn't really understand, what was going on in that moment. In her mind, she's still stuck in everything that happened to her that day. And this just exploded so much to where it's so overwhelming. And she don't even really understand how she got there. Like, you know what I'm saying? So, she really kind of helped to make sense of it for the other cops that was there, that was like, no, this is just a simple robbery. This hostages, this, and this. We got a negotiator. But I think when she got the lady to tell her story, when she got Janiyah to tell her story and to go into that, is when she really started getting everybody else to understand this is a story of something deeper. This is a story of a mental breakdown. And I think even as the viewers, you're understanding, even a little bit more. You know what I'm saying? So I think kind of like, and I'm going to just stop here to say this. To try to say like, this was a story about single women, right? Single mothers. I think it would take away from all the other elements that was so important to this story, because just to say this was a story about single mothers, I think that this could be men, this could be anybody who experiences so much stuff and trauma and all of this stuff that they get to the point of a mental breakdown. And I think even more so than it being a story about single mothers, I think that it was a story about mental health. It truly was. And I think that that really was the point that maybe he was trying to get across through this story, and that people just kind of took it as that because that was the only thing that I was hearing. And I think a lot of people who was giving reviews probably ain't even seen that shit yet anyway. So people was just saying what they kind of felt like, probably from looking at the little clips or whatever that they might have seen. Because when I watched it, it was so different than what I thought it was gonna be, right? But continuing on into the story, the way that the story developed was just crazy. But there was a couple of parts that I wanted to note also in this, in the midst of the whole thing, right? I wanted to note the fact that when she was, feeling like nobody understood her, the craziest part is that you see the person who is the bank manager, and she's really able to connect with her and get her to trust her. You see the lady cop, and she's talking to her and she's getting her to trust her and everything, right? But there was one more character that I feel like was very underrated and underappreciated in this whole thing, and that was the older lady, the lady who ended up, having to get let out and everything because she had diabetes and she was, having problems with that. But the older lady really kind of helped her to put things in perspective too, because what she said to her is, how much worse some people have it. And sometimes when you in the midst of some shit and you got everything going on in your mind, you need somebody to tell you that shit too, because it might feel like it's just happening to you, and that it's like, why is God just hitting me with the worst shit I could possibly get hit with? I'm just getting getting hit back to back with all of the worst stuff that could possibly happen to you. All of the worst stuff that you could think of, it's just happening to me in a day, and I feel like I want to die and all of this stuff. And she's like, no, some people have it worse than you. You know what I'm saying? And I think sometimes that reality check is needed, because when you fall into that vortex of sometimes feeling bad for yourself, even if it's bad shit and you should feel bad for yourself. But you know what? Also, one other thing you should put into perspective is, like she said, I try to be grateful, because if you got the right mindset, you can find a reason to be grateful in any situation. And sometimes it ain't easy, but you can. So that was another thing I think that was important. But I think by the time we took the turn where we see the FBI get involved, and they just not hearing it at all, they like, this is protocol. Y'all done been on here enough messing around with this lady. She done went live for the world to see. And now everybody's like, what I'm saying, trying to rally in on behalf of her and all of this stuff. Like, look, we coming in to clear it up. We coming in to do what we gonna do. Y'all done took long enough. She not coming out. We gonna do it our way. I think with them trying to strong arm the situation, it could have made it so much worse. And I think that this is where we kind of see the pinnacle of Janiyah start to kind of like, from where she's kind of coming out of the mental breakdown, go full-fledged back into it. And something was very interesting in this whole story of once you realize the plot twist, right? Once you realize the plot twist of her daughter having died. I mean, it's one of those things you don't see coming, because you're like, okay, all of this awful stuff already happened. So when you hear that the daughter passed, you like, why would her mama tell her that in the midst of everything that's going on? Why would her mama tell her that, that news? But then when you realize, oh, her daughter died the night before. And when her daughter died, she's realizing now, she's having to come to acceptance of the fact that this happened. And it's one of those things that is really a mind blower, because then you begin to understand slowly some things. You begin to understand, number one, why the bank teller lady was very much so like, you know what? I'm going to stick by you. Because even though she was saying stuff like, will you take my daughter? Will you, watch my daughter? Will you keep my daughter safe and everything? I think the bank teller lady, they probably had already told her that over the phone. So she probably already knew that. But she was kind of trying to stick with her until she got to that place of acceptance. Because I think that really Janiyah just had not that's something that's you're not just going to easily just accept. It's something that's going to make you, you know what I'm saying, take a long time to try to process that. And I think she probably realized that, you know, but she had to give her another hard truth, like, baby, you're probably going to jail. You know what I'm saying? You're going to do some time in there, but you know what? I will come visit you. And I think really when we see the scene that, like, because this part blew my mind, right? When you see the little shit where, like, you see her hear that on the phone, then you see the police come and raid and they shoot her and all of this stuff, and then you realize even that wasn't real. You realize, like, she's going through so many stages at once. Mentally, she's just zooming through all these stages at once, to the extent to where she finally comes through to having to accept that her daughter is dead. And I'm gonna tell you something, man. I know, and in looking at some of the stuff that Taraji has said in interviews and stuff like that, you know, she really only takes the roles that she knows she can do the best with, or she can be the strongest in. And I think she was very strong in this role, because this role really personified somebody who tries to keep it all together, somebody who tries to just kind of go through something and move normally into life like it's not happening, and realizes that they just can't. So, you know, the aspects of her being a woman really was only one part of it. The aspect of her being a single mother really was only one part of it, because those things was important to the story, right? But also those things sat side by side with another centerpiece, which was something that anybody can go through, even if you're not a woman, even if you're not a single mother, even if you're not a mother. You can go through that mental breakdown of being so extremely overwhelmed to the point that you cannot bring your mind back into focus. You cannot bring your mind back into reality. You cannot really, you know, come into a mental place of understanding what's going on, everything. So that movie was crazy. I mean, just from the beginning to the end, it really was crazy. But that was my review. And everybody let me know in the comments what y'all thought about it when y'all saw it. So let me know.